Yes, welcome everybody to another edition of Cut to the Jase. I'm Braden Heselhurst, website editor of basketball.com.au, and of course joined by the main man, NBL legend and former boomer, Jason Cadee. Jase, we're taking it back to ourselves today because we've had 6 episodes in a row with some great guests. We've had Indy Cotton and Roman Sialipa, two up-and-coming superstars of Australian sport, one not in basketball anymore. We've had Peter Lonergan, we've had Nathan Sobey, Casey Prater last week, Jade Melbourne, Liam Santa Maria talking about the next stars. We've had some absolutely sensational guests across the podcast so far.
No, it's been great. And it probably, when we first started this, we weren't expecting to roll out guest after guest, but just kind of with the launch of it all and I guess the momentum just rolled into different people and having some great guests that we really couldn't say no to either. So it's been really good. I really enjoyed this first part of this process with Cut to the Jason and just speaking to different people on different levels and where they're at in kind of there's so many different domains in the basketball world and it's been nice to explore so many different ones. But the whole concept of this was we would bring it back to us at certain times and just talk about the general landscape of basketball as well. And yeah, it's been great having so many great people on and we've got a heap of guests to come. But yeah, today just getting back to us and chewing the fat about all things basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got plenty of people on the waiting list. It's becoming like a busy restaurant on Cut to the Chase. You have to sort of book a spot to try and get in. But like we said, we're going to bring it back to us today. And as always, there's almost too much basketball to cover this week. NBA going in full swing. We've got college season tipping off. NBL and WNBL, of course, in full swing. Sandy Brondello has a new home. Plenty happening. But first of all, there's something I want to touch on. And you've made your commentary debut this season, couple of games in now. What has it been like? Of course, we've spoken about there's been some great feedback. What's it been like? And secondly, what was it like to go into Adelaide and be a commentator in that arena where you played the last couple of seasons?
It's been really cool. It wasn't it kind of came up out of nowhere. It did come up in the off season, but I wasn't really sure what it'd look like. And I've never, surprisingly, I've done a lot of things, but I've never actually commentated a game. Like I've done an interview maybe in a preseason game or something where you sit in there for 5 minutes, but you're really just kind of answering questions. So to sit there and kind of dissect the game, and I actually said to someone, it's almost more mentally fatiguing than the basketball game when you're a player because you have to stay locked into every possession and what's going on in and around the game. Where sometimes as a player in the game, you get subbed down, you take a minute just to sit there and kind of chill out. But I've really enjoyed it. It's been a great learning curve for me. Just learning. I've been very fortunate. I had Brad Rosen on everyone I've done. He's been great helping. John Casey, obviously, a couple of times, and Matty Russell, who they're both elite in their field. And so it's been awesome. And then doing the two Sydney games prior, I didn't really have the I missed this because Sydney, I haven't played there for a long period of time and it hasn't been home, even though I do love Kudos Bank Arena. But walking to Adelaide on the weekend was it was bizarre. Like I almost got I didn't know where I was going, so I had to ask, where do I go? Where the commentators go? And then obviously I end up sitting there talking to Mike and talking to some of the boys and just seeing everyone that I've seen for the last few years. So it was a really weird feeling. It's the first moment I've really had inside where I was like, should I still be playing? What am I doing? But no, I enjoyed being there and hopefully I get to go there a few more times.
Now, during those sort of moments in a game like that, especially a close game like you called on the weekend, as a player who's only just recently retired, do you sometimes get lost and almost forget that you have to speak on the game during, especially the closing stages of that game where it was really, a tense one down the stretch?
Yeah, a little bit. And I guess because I haven't seen Adelaide in person, at times I found myself almost thinking certain things like I was back sitting on the bench. Like it was might have been something for DJ or something for Isaac or people that I played with, and I was kind of like, oh, could run this action. And I said to through your comms and your headphones, you can hear different things around the game, and obviously you're back in broadcast, but I could actually hear Mike calling out plays at times, and so I almost I almost was gonna say what he was calling out because I remembered a lot of them, but I was like, I can't give away everything that he knows. So I found myself just at times floating back into I'm actually not commentating. But it was kind of cool too because it just yeah, it's obviously some indifferent memories the last few years in Adelaide, but it is an environment and a place like just that arena. What that's become in the last few years has been. I obviously was a part of it, where we sold out basically the second half of my first season and all last season, and now they're on track again. So it was a great atmosphere. And Dave O'Hickey goes to the line for those last two free throws. I just quickly popped the headphones on just to actually hear the noise properly because it was loud in there.
Yeah, now I've got to ask one question, one more question on the commentary stuff. Now, you're an NBL lifer, and someone we grew up listening to as far as the NBL coverage and everything was John Casey, the old Fox Sports days, and him and Steve Carfino when I think there used to be one or maybe two games a week. What was it like commentating with him? Because I think he's the greatest voice in Australian basketball as far as the media side goes. And people don't understand how far this guy goes as far as his research and everything. And I think you can see it with his sheets and everything on the commentary desk. What was it like to sit next to him?
No, when I first saw I was doing the Sydney game with John, I was pumped because, as you said, like he's a voice that you just recognize with basketball. His terms like user-friendly role and all that stuff is everything that we've kind of grown up with. But the research he has in terms of his little notebooks and everything he's got in there, it's crazy just the depth of knowledge he already has in his memory, but also what he keeps. So he being alongside him, just sometimes I found myself just listening to him because that's what I'm used to doing, right? You just listen to Case. And at times I'm like, oh, hang on, he's looking at me to chime in here. So I feel very fortunate to something I wasn't really, I guess, thinking about doing, but to be doing it and sitting alongside someone like him. It's been a really cool experience for me, and I think Case is excellent at his job. He always has been. I'm so excited that he's doing more NBL this year, it seems, because I think there's a whole cohort of people, especially those who are probably a bit younger than me up, that just love listening to Case talk basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've seen the likes of Body Nodge and people like that be recognized for their contributions to basketball media throughout their career. And I think John Casey needs to be recognized somehow because he's been there from basically the start. He's been there through, when it was lacking a bit of publicity and lacking a bit of juice and all that sort of stuff. And he's there to sort of reap the rewards when it's up and about again now. So great to see Case doing more, as you mentioned. But our first topic for the day, Jase, I want to get started with the Aussies in the NBA, in particular two, which we're going to focus on, and that's Josh Giddey and Jock Landale and their impressive starts. Now, let's start with Josh Giddey. Now, I will say while we're recording, he's in another game, but at the moment, they're 5-1, only lost to the Knicks the other day. That's without Kobe White and Josh Giddey leading the way, playing almost at an all-star level, averaging 22.2 points a game, 9.2 rebounds, 8.7 assists, and shooting just over 40% from the three-point line. What have you seen from him early on? Because he's been in sensational form for the Bulls.
Yeah, I actually don't think it's near all-star. I think it is all-star numbers right now. Like, I think his start to the year has been great. Maybe he should have signed a one-year deal. But no, I think that's a big part of it, right? Like I think Josh, in a way, is he signed a $100 million US deal. He's basically secured his future for him and his family for a long, long time. So I think there might be a little bit now that he's signed in a place he really loves playing. Like when I spoke to Josh in the off season when he was back, he loves Chicago, has a genuine love for it. They have so much history as a ball club. And so I think for him, you're just seeing someone that signed a brand new deal. He loves where he's at. He wants to be there. And he works his ass off. And so he's not in that, I mean, just because he signed this deal, but he's not in that rookie phase anymore. He's kind of out of that where he's been through the learnings of it. And I just think you're seeing someone who's really comfortable in the environment he's in. He, the way he's playing just looks like someone who just really is enjoying what he's doing and where he is. And it'll be exciting once they get Colby back too. But for Josh, what a great start to basically a brand new contract and everything around it. If he keeps trending this way, he will be an all-star this year. There's no doubt about it. And I think that's great for him and it's great for Australian basketball.
Now, we did a story on basketball.com.au yesterday, and it listed the road triple doubles, the most road triple doubles by a player at Madison Square Garden. And already in 6 games, Josh has 4, and he's second on that list. He's tied with LeBron, but LeBron has 31 games to get to 4. He's only trailing Larry Bird, who has 6 and did it in 29 games. And some of the names he's passed, Russell Westbrook, Magic Johnson, and everything like that. So he's in some pretty esteemed company. And that triple-double came in a loss, but he's making some inroads early on in his career in the NBA, Jase.
And I saw someone actually said, all right, I'm here now. Josh Giddey at Madison Square Garden's a thing. Like, it's a thing. So, no, it's impressive. And even, like, if you go back to some of the numbers that were happening at different times with triple doubles and things like that, like, they're in numbers with some very, very, like, superstars of this world, like your Jokic's and your LeBrons. So, I just think it's great. I think he's landed in a really great place. I think the franchise as a whole should be really happy with what they've done in bringing him back. And now they can start to put some pieces in, which can hopefully get Chicago back to what a lot of people remember them, and that's a finals team.
What do you think this means for the Boomers? Now, we're used to having, players in recent years who are significant contributors, but no one has been the leader of their NBA team and then stepped in as a leader of the Boomers. Now, Josh is basically doing that right now. He's the leader of that Bulls team, and that can only mean great things for the future of the Boomers, right?
I mean, I think it's massive. And the thing that you mentioned earlier, which I probably should have touched on, is Josh is shooting three ball at 40-something%. That's probably been a bit of his struggle, if you want to call it, but it's been a bit of where if he improves his three ball, it changes his whole game. And I think that's why you're seeing his numbers, especially points wise, grow. And so I look internationally now and I'm like, there's no questions that we're rolling out Josh and Dyson as a backcourt. Like, they're great mates. They're both they're solidified themselves in the NBA and they will keep doing that over the next few years. And so for me, having Josh as one of those premier NBA players, it opens up our whole world as an Australian team. And I think if you look at the next kind of 2 Olympic campaigns, the next 10 years, having Josh and Dyson lead that and spearhead that with the kind of crop that's coming around those guys, I mean, I think it's massive, and it's probably something it is something we've never seen before.
And I think the great thing for them too is they've improved their offensive game. Obviously, we spoke about it with Josh, but Dyson has as well. Off to a bit of a slow start, but he's finding his feet, and last year showed he can make an impact on that end. So that's great signs for the Boomers as well. Now, we're going to move on to Jock Landale, and I think this is huge for the Boomers because I think probably more than any other position, this is where we need Jock Landale firing, and he's really our only, let's say, definite big in that Boomers team that can play the 5. We saw him do that in 2021 when Aaron Baines went out with that unfortunate injury. Really, stood up in that 5 spot because he has the strength and everything to play against the bigs, but he also can stretch the floor. And I think his form is huge for the Boomers. Now, starting with Zach Edey out, even among some issues at the Memphis Grizzlies, playing really well. 11 points a game, just over 5 rebounds, 59% from the field, and he's shooting the 3 above 50%. And more important than his percentage, I think he's shooting the 3 with confidence and looking to shoot that. It's huge for the Boomers and huge for Jock, the start of the season that he's had in Memphis.
No, 100%. I think for him too, like, he's been in the NBA for a few years now and just searching for some consistent opportunity. And obviously, through injury, sometimes opportunity presents, and he's fully taken that to start the year. Now, look, there is some controversy there with different things, but I was going to say the other part to him in that lineup is when you've got a guy like Ja Morant and the attention he draws, sometimes that can actually make your life easier in terms of if I do A, B, and C well, it's going to end up in me leaving a game averaging whatever I average. So I think for Jock, and you're right, like, it's probably the one area we are really, who are our bigs going forward? Like, we've gone through an Andrew Bogut, Aaron Baines phase, which then led into kind of Jock and Duop and Will Magnay was a part of that crew. Like, there's some guys around, but who are they going to be? And Jock obviously is the first person to basically say it's your spot for the taking to own that 5-man spot. And his NBA start this year kind of says that he's taking another step in his journey, as I think he's only 30, so he's still got some good years ahead of him.
And it was good to see a bit of a highlight dunk over Beef Stew, Isaiah Stewart from the Detroit Pistons. And I think it's really big for Jock to get his confidence back because I think even when he was less experienced in the Boomers team, take that 2021 campaign, for example, the way he goes about it, he's an emotional guy. And outside of Paddy, to me, he was a bit of a spiritual leader. And I think without Paddy, he can be that considering we've got that new crop and younger crop coming through.
Well, if you look at it now, right, and you look at that team, he is kind of the older guy now. Like when you really think about it, like he was the middle guy for these last few years, but now he is kind of one of the older ones. So I think he plays a big part in that, and I think the connection that him, Josh, Dyson, that crew can have together, they can kind of shape it. Like we've gone through uh, a period where people do talk about the Boomers and they talk about Paddy, and then Joe ties into that and some of those other guys like your Bogues and your Andre Lamanis and your Brian Gorgens. We go through that kind of, that last 10, 15 years has been those guys. So I look at it now as like it's shaping as a whole new journey we're about to embark on. And I think Josh is that, even though obviously Josh and that were part of it, but Josh is that middleman in terms of his age and where he sits. And I think it's an exciting time for him to take some ownership as well.
And just on the Boomers, before we go into a special segment we've got today, with Adam Capehorn in, now we saw the Boomers go through several stages with different coaches. Under Andre Lamanis, the way they moved the ball and executed offensively, I thought was amongst the best teams in world basketball. We saw a bit of a different one under Gorge. It was more sort of pick and roll, a bit of ISO, a bit clunky at stages, but they got the job done. Under Capes, do you see a return to that sort of, not exactly like Lamanis, but that sort of structure offensively? I know Cape spoke to us about that when we did an interview with him about building up that system offensively. Do you see more of a return to that sort of style of play?
I'd like to hope so. I think the one thing with us in Australian basketball is we are very heavily influenced by America, and that's a little bit because now we have more guys in the system, and Cape's being one of them in our players. But I think the one thing that can make us different is, like, for me, I think if we play the way the Americans play, I don't see how we can beat them. They're too talented. Where if we can play the way Australians with a mix of Euro, but we have the talent of NBA players, now we can find a point of difference. And so for me, I'd like to see, and I'm hoping that Capes has been around through that whole period. Like when I was involved playing as well in all the Asia Cups and the Com Games, Capes was the assistant for all of that with Dre. And Dre gave him a lot of power through scouts and different things to lead. So I'd like to hope Capes can find that mix where we are that NBA environment because we do have guys from there, but we are very much our own style where we mix in, especially offensively, some ball movement and we get the thing popping. And then we can find that difference where we don't play like the US, but we don't play like Europe, and we have that heavy mix. I think that can be a space we can live in. And if we can get it right, I think it could be an exciting thing for him to work in. But that's up to him and his coaching staff how they want to play ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought we saw some signs of Capes' mind at the Asia Cup. Now, they had a lack of point guards, including Shawnee Mack, who's not really a point guard per se, but he got injured just before the Asia Cup. And to sort of combat that, he played more through his versatile bigs, being able to bring up the ball up the floor and everything like that. So great to see that insight. And I think we'll see some different things from Capes going forward. Now, to build onto that, we're going to do, considering the hype around the Aussies in the NBA at the moment, we're going to go through and pick who would be our Boomers starting five right now. Now, I think it's pretty easy in some positions, but there's one position in particular that's a bit different for both of us, Jase, but I'm going to get you to go through your starting five first.
So I think it's pretty obvious, and I just said it. Josh and Dyson are easily your backcourt. I think now when we say right now, are we saying if we line up a game today, or are we saying for the next tournament type thing? That's the other thing we've got to clarify here.
Yeah, I think if we had to pick our starting five now for a major tournament coming up, I think that's the way we're doing it.
I think obviously we've floated between a Matisse Thybulle, Josh Green, like we flow between those. I think now with what he's doing, I think Furphy fits the mold for the 3 spot for me as that 3-and-D guy. And he's obviously proven to be an elite athlete in the
really
spot.
Where have you seen that? Maybe ask the Chicago Bulls rookie.
Yes. In the 4 spot, now I'm going different here, but we just spoke about Jock Landale. He's the 5 man. So I have shooters all around. If he really wants to and he wanted to be ready for a major tournament, I think Ben Simmons can still add real value at the 4 spot for us.
Now I'm gonna put you on the spot here. If you had to say at the next major tournament, which is a World Cup, is Ben Simmons lining up for the Boomers?
If I had to bet something majorly on it, I'd say no, because history says. But I think unless Ben retires in the next few months and he's not playing anymore, I think now he is more of a chance ever than playing. I just think now it might be the time that he actually does.
Yeah, that's a good starting 5, Jase. I'm going a little bit different because I think Ben is not going to play, although I'd love to see him play. Everything the Australian Boomers fan in me would really love to see him play. And to sort of tick that box before he retires, I think everyone wants to see that. My starting 5, I'm going with Josh and Dyson in the backcourt. Johnny Furphy, of course. I think he's shown not only his athleticism, his ability to defend. Pascal Siakam had a great press conference the other day where he spoke about opposition teams thinking they could attack Johnny Furphy when they look at him. And he goes, he's not that guy. And that comes off the back of that great training day reenactment between Pascal Siakam and Johnny Furphy. If you haven't seen it, go on Bounce Pass socials and everything. It's on there. It's great. But I think he's shown the ability to attack the basket and also shoot the ball as well. So I think that's invaluable at that level. And then I've gone with, obviously, Jock Landale at the 5. I've gone with leaning into that defensive identity. I think we've got enough offensive weapons with how Josh Giddey and Dyson have developed. I'm going to put Matisse back in. I know it might be a little bit of a battle getting him to want to be a part of the Boomers again after the recent Olympic campaign and how he was not selected there, but I think he plays the 4 in that, and I think that's a really good starting 5. The other question I'll ask Jason, again on the spot, on the back of me picking Matisse. Now, you can only have one naturalized player at a major tournament.
I asked you this exact question.
Is Bryce Cotton in your Boomers team?
I think it depends. I think my dad has a bit of a theory that not all imports or Americans that become naturalized work out in the Australian team. And his reason is that when we see them in the NBL, they are the guy. So they spend their whole careers in the NBL, 30 plus minutes, whatever shot you want to take. And then they go to this other environment where it's like, you're coming off the bench, you're playing spot minutes. Like, how do they adjust to that? Which I actually see his reason over the years of saying that not everyone can thrive. Bryce is maybe one of the ones for me that can. Because he's got, you look at the way he plays, shoots the ball well. He's not, I don't want to say he's Paddy, because they're different, but he's got that element of he can come on and get hot in a hurry. He shoots on the move. You can only pick one, though. I agree to you. I thought Matisse, for me, was rough missing out on the last one. I thought he should have been there. I don't know how you split it. I think you just go down to what do we need most. If we need someone who can score, then I think you got to go with Bryce. If you need length and defense, well, then it's obviously Matisse.
And I think the other thing, too, in going on to your starting 5, if you're able to get Ben Simmons in the team, that might be at the expense of someone like Matisse. I don't think he probably fits in then. And then to me, if you have Simmons, then Bryce Cotton's a no-brainer to be part of that bench, someone that can turn the game. We've seen Chris Golding play not that sort of role, but a role off the bench for the Boomers in the past where he's been that sniper coming off and really impacting games at major international tournaments. So I think Bryce could play a role in that way, but we'll get those up on socials. We'll see what the listeners of Cut to the Jase think. Our next topic today, Jase, we're going to go to a bit of a friend of yours and mine and a friend of the show and going to appear on the show in the coming weeks, and that's Sandy Brondello. Now, we haven't really spoken about it at length, but was absolutely rough to be, I don't want to say sacked, but fired by the New York Liberty after what she did there. After one poor season, it wasn't even a poor season. They lost in the first round of the NBA playoffs. Yeah. They had so many injuries. She took that team from, the Deldrums when she first went there to a championship last season. has found a new home at the Toronto Tempo, the new expansion team, along with Portland, of course, going to be in next season. I think it's a really good fit too. I think it's really smart for the Toronto Tempo as well, because with the new CBA negotiations, basically everyone is a free agent. Now, Sandy Brondello is really respected in WNBA circles, so I think that's a great ploy for them to get some talent there early. What do you think of this signing? What do you think of Sandy moving there? And getting the chance, I guess, to build something from the start, which she mentioned in the club's release today, is what attracted her to the Toronto Tempo in the first place.
No, well, knowing what you just said, that you kind of have a chance. I mean, firstly, like it's great for Sandy. Like I think she deserves that opportunity, and I think it's great she's regarded high enough in the WNBA that they would say we think we can start a franchise with her as our head coach. That can come with some teething issues, but if there is a whole host of free agents available, I think that's great for her because we all know how well regarded she is. But what an exciting opportunity, like as a coach, to be able to say I get to start fresh with this franchise and kind of help build this into something. I think that's what everyone dreams of, being able to build their own situation and then actually kind of bring in what they think can represent who they want to be as a club. It'll be very interesting because also startup clubs are hard. It can be not as great and glamorous those first few years. So hopefully for her, obviously the draft system and how they do things, if they can get some things to play in their favor, will help. But I think it's awesome for Sandy. I think New York have messed up, in my opinion. They've messed up, and Toronto's just swept in. And we kind of spoke off air over the last few weeks of where she might land. We knew there's some interest from some other clubs, but she's chose Toronto, and I think they'd be stoked with who they've got on board as their head coach.
Just on the New York Liberty situation, I thought this was a big point when it happened. After losing in the first round of the playoffs this year, it really sort of spiked a thing in my head about not only front offices in America, but here at home. And I think front offices have a real lack of understanding of how hard it is to be successful, especially for an extended period of time. Do you think that's something front offices across professional ranks really lack an understanding of?
Yeah, I think sometimes we mix too much business with basketball. Like I actually think there's the I understand it is a business, but there's a business part to it and there's a basketball part to it. I do believe the business doesn't necessarily mix with the basketball, but the basketball messes with the business because at the end of the day, businesses are involved because of the basketball. And so I just think sometimes the lack of understanding of thinking we can just chop and change things and it'll all work out. You're almost just hoping that you flick a magic candle and it turns on once, and that's the recipe. Where I think that you got to go with the process at times and understand that that process will lead to results. It might not lead to you winning a title every single year, but it will lead to consistency and giving you the best chance to win a title, because the other part that comes into that is luck. Sometimes injury luck and all those different things play a part. So listen, sometimes I think we've got some people in those positions that just jump to business decisions. I think the New York thing, I believe there's other things at play that's why it's got this thing. It's the only thing that makes sense to me. Sometimes I come back to what makes sense. And what makes sense is there were other things at play that just didn't make sense, basketball reasons, and that's why they've moved that way. And I think we've seen consistency across the NBL, the WBL, every league around the world. It pops up every now and then where we see some people making decisions that just make no sense.
Yeah, might have had a little bit of experience with that myself at a low level, but we won't go into detail about that now. One free agent to watch, especially after some issues last year, is Australian Opals big Ezi Magbagor, now an absolute star, one of the best defensive players in the WNBA. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Toronto Tempo and Sandy put their name in the ring to try and get Ezi there this season. But great to see Sandy get a new gig, and like I said, we'll have her on the show in the coming weeks. Now we're going to move on to the college ranks. We're just going to touch on this briefly, Jase, because there are just too many Aussies to focus on. Now we've got plenty of coverage across basketball.com.au and our socials, but yesterday we had defending national champions in the Florida Gators and Alex Condon from Western Australia taking on Anthony Deloso from Melbourne, playing for the Arizona Wildcats. Now, the Wildcats got up in that one, but I think a massive thing to watch is Alex Condon's progression, considering, like we spoke about, the Boomers' lack of sort of depth in the big spot is a big thing. And, he would have been selected in the NBA draft if he kept his name in the draft, elected to go another season at Florida, but he's a big one for Australians to watch out for.
No, and you nailed it in the head because it's what he can possibly provide in the 5-man in the depth. So it's obviously a big year. The fact that he pulled out of the draft to go back, fair enough. Maybe he thought he needed another year there. But for me, this is a big year for him just because it's gonna, after this year, you're moving on into this professional ranks and how far can you take your game and does it basically directly impact what our Australian men's team looks like? Because I think it's that 5 spot, as you said, is going to be very wide open for the next 5 to 10 years, and we've got some young guys coming through.
And on top of that, Roman Cialipo played his first game with Pitt, had a highlight block, and I think we're going to see plenty of those type of highlights across the season. Plenty of women across the top levels of Division One basketball as well. Lara Somfay, a freshman at Stanford, had a really good game in her first outing for Stanford, one of the best colleges in the US. They're looking to get back to the NCAA tournament after missing out last year for the first time in 35 years. We had Opal Bird impress. She was a Bendigo Spirit previously. Had a really good game for Wake Forest. So plenty of people for Aussie basketball fans to keep across in the college basketball season, Jase.
No, it's really exciting. And that's one thing, as I said, when we first started this show, me and you both spoke about trying to touch on a whole range of different things. And the college landscape is getting harder to keep up with because we have so many kids coming through there. But we will definitely, throughout this whole journey we're going on with Cut to the Jase, we'll find time to bring them on and talk to different kids in different situations, allow others to learn about the college environment, and also try and highlight kids when they're going through that and when they have good games and so on. So no, it's good that it's all started. I think it's great, and I know obviously being close with Roman, he was looking forward to just get the game underway and kind of just starting that whole procedure of playing games and learning what it looks like. So it's exciting times for all of them.
And one person people might not know has a little bit of a connection to Australia is Tommy Lloyd, the coach of the Arizona Wildcats. He spent some time in Brisbane earlier on in his life, and he's someone I want to try and get on this program. So we've started the process of that, so we'll see if we can get him on now. We're going to the WNBL now before we start on our NBL coverage, and a massive round, and it was led by a legend of Australian basketball, continuing to show that she still has, especially in big moments. And that, of course, is Opal's legend, Kayla George, for the Southside Melbourne Flyers. At age 36, keeps performing at such a high level. Townsville, going into the season, were ranked as the championship favourites, and Southside got their first win, put them to their first loss. And Kayla had 26 points, including 6 threes, and she was huge in that game. But I just want to touch on Kayla a little bit, Jase. It's someone you've obviously seen across the Australian basketball scene for more than a decade. What are your thoughts on how she's been able to, progress throughout her career, seeing her across your career as well, and sort of where she sits among the rankings of, Australia's greatest female players, because she's done it for a very long time now?
Oh no, Kayla's been awesome, and there's always a place for a big who can shoot the ball like she does, that's for sure. But then the other part to Kayla is, which, like those who have been around her, she's just a fun, energetic person who's good to be around. Like, you're always, whenever I've ever seen Kayla or people that have ever been around her, they just speak about her as a person, not her as a basketball player. And then, so to see her doing what she's doing, it doesn't surprise me. I think she came out not long ago saying, hang on a second, guys, I might be getting a little older, but let's not start talking about retirement. I'm going to keep playing. So I think it's great. She keeps just showing just how good she is at times. And I think the thing is for her, especially with that team down there, she's got some guards around her that can open up the floor, and her ability just to stretch bigs out and make them guard her on the 3-point line. She's just smart. She gets it done. And for Southside, that's a great win beating Townsville. Obviously, Townsville bounced back last night, but yeah, Kayla's still getting it done, and I'm sure she'll still try and play a part in that Australian team as long as she can as well.
And had one of the greatest responses in a post game interview as well. Now, she kept getting asked about her age and all that sort of stuff. And she said, it's funny, if I play bad, they call me moldy. I'm moldy cheese, but if I play good, I'm aging like a fine wine. She had a great comment. I just want to, again, put you on the spot. I've done that a couple of times this episode. Have you, what's been the best, or have you got an example of just like a great post game press conference that you've been in, or post game interview where something, someone said a great thing like that, but that was an all time one from Kayla George?
Nah, geez, there's been a few over the time, but the ones that are really like just pop up like that, it's often the guys that have a bit of a joke with things. Like Kayla's always one. It's the ones who have a bit of sarcasm to them. Anyone who's a bit serious, like they never really give you much, but someone like Kayla who's always thinking about jokes and different things, they're the ones that normally give you some great ones. But that's definitely one of the better ones I've heard.
Yeah, you played for Jase, mate. He's had some absolute
Well,
classics.
Gazy said some too many things to remember, but but there's so many different terms that some always deem is it appropriate or not. But he says it in a way that it's because it's Drewy. Everyone goes, it's Drewy.
Mate, that one where he just sculled the water and then talked about his arousal levels after Bogues has dunked through the middle of the lane. That was absolute classics.
That was up there. There was even one with it was actually, here you go. It was my last ever game in Sydney. I didn't play again for Sydney after this. We played at home, and I think I had 30 or 32 points. And they said to Drewy, basically, does that help you guys re-sign Jase or something like that? He goes, oh, well, if he had 40, it might have. It was even another one, actually, they brought up. I must have scored maybe 1,000 points for the Kings, or it was something in that realm of something. And Drewy told me, he goes, is that it? I was like, oh, come on, mate. Not everyone's you.
Yeah, not everyone's been playing NBL since they were 12, Drewy. But yeah, he's got some absolute classics and worth a listen if you go to YouTube and search up some classic Jase press conferences. He's absolutely sensational on the sidelines. Now, we are going to go to our NBL section for the week. And I wasn't going to keep this to 5 minutes, but I think we will because we've had so much other stuff to cover. Your JC 5 points from the recent round of the NBL. And to start, you're going to go with the obvious one, Jase, and it's the Sydney Kings after their 2-0 week with a good win in Brisbane and then a massive win to send United to their first loss of the season.
Well, it kind of sums up the group right now because I had him in there last week at number 3 for their poor week, and now I've got him in for an excellent week. But this, to me, what you saw this weekend was a Sydney group I think everyone thought they were getting from the start of the year. Okay, it's taken some time. I'm still not fully convinced that they're there yet. But if they trend like they did this weekend for a few weeks and can piece it together leading into the FIBA break, I think you're going to see another team just solidify themselves as a top 4, top 2, where they'll land. But I just thought they played both games. They didn't give Brisbane a chance. They suffocated them. It was over early. Brisbane were never a chance in that game. And then with United, they actually hung tough in moments where they haven't. I thought Bull Qual was excellent this weekend. It was like he's got away. Now, listen, Bull's very talented. He's physical. He does a lot of good things. And he's gone there on obviously a big contract with some expectations, which maybe people don't think he's lived up to. Some people think that he may have. But for me, he got away from a bit of the bullshit in terms of like, I don't think he needs to always be an antagonizer. I know it's part of his game, but his length, he's an elite defender when he wants to and he doesn't foul. He offensively can help him with his ability to shoot. I thought this weekend you just see Bull. I thought he just played excellent on both sides of the ball and he came up big for them down the stretch against United. And so the list goes on. Obviously, Cadee had a great weekend, especially against United, going down there and doing that to them, where it's a defensive team. So I just thought Sydney as a whole, they got it right. And then even Delhi, for example, Delhi hit more threes in the United game than he's hit all year long.
And stare downs at Dean Vickerman as well.
And had a bit of attitude to it. And so, I mean, for Delhi, I'm stoked for him. Like, Delhi's a great person. He's done a lot for Australian basketball. He's going through like a bit of a rough transition, I guess, to Sydney. But I actually I had to look this up because I felt like they were playing Delhi too much. And if you take out the New Zealand game earlier in the year, they won by a mozzo and everyone played basically the same amount of minutes. If you take out that game, he's averaged probably over 30 minutes a game. And some of that's getting 33, 34 minutes. I actually think that's too much. I don't think Delhi needs to play that much in terms of you've got Cadee there, you've got Jalen Galloway, you've got Xavier Cooks, you've got other guys who need the ball as well. I think Delhi, and on the weekend, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think he played 24, 25 minutes both games. And pretty efficient, shot the ball better in the second game doing that. I reckon that's their... Now, listen, there'll be random games where maybe Delhi's having a blinder, you're playing 30 plus, but I just thought they got it right this week.
You might have went a little bit over a minute there, but just one question or point to add on top of it. We know Brian Goorjian is a specialist of taking a team with an us versus them mentality into a certain situation. We saw it with Adelaide. Now, Melbourne, you kind of have that because they're the favourites. They're undefeated. The Bullets game, I think you can sort of disregard that. They've always given the Bullets troubles, I think, because of their length and versatility and how they go about it. The question now, and you sort of mentioned it, is can they maintain this going forward? And that's always the biggest question with the Sydney Kings in recent years.
And that was also my thinking. They spoke a lot about KD in Adelaide, Delhi in Melbourne. So it's like that siege mentality of everyone against us. That gets old, and you got to start making up stories after a while of what are we playing against. But if they can turn that into just an every night thing, they're going to be a tough group to stop. So Gorge has done it, especially for those games, those big games you speak about. But can they do it again? And then can they do it against even teams that don't have that kind of, I guess, whatever you want to call it, rivalry or storyline against?
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought one interesting tactic was you saw a clear target for the Sydney Kings when Golding got on. Ball Kowal went straight to the post and went at Chris Golding. And it was to the point where even stretches of the fourth quarter, CG43 was on the bench. So some good moves there from Brian Goorjian. I showed what he can still do at the coaching level in this league. And secondly, Jase, you're going to go to two New Zealand breakers who really impressed, and they had a massive win over the Hawks this previous round.
Yeah, and these two have just had big seasons. Like New Zealand's form is starting to trend upwards, which I think is exciting for them, but I think it's trending upwards because of these two. I think Karim Lopez as a next star, I think if you're an NBA team and you're looking at next stars that come in our league, he's shown improvement across the board, and he's shooting the three ball this year at 44% so far, which is something I think last year we kind of were like, let him shoot a little bit. We'll live with him shooting as long as he doesn't get to the ring. So I think his trajectory is helping their group with his length and size, and now he's knocking down the three ball. And the other one, Sam Menenga, I just think what he's done this year, he's taken his game to another level in terms of his points have jumped from about 12 to 18, rebounds from about 5 to 8. I think it's kind of like he's taken on this approach of I am the best big man in the league, or I'm trying to show you that I can be talked about in this conversation. And both times they've played Illawarra, he's actually played very, very well against JaVale McGee, which I think is it's massive for him and where he's going, and it helps the Breakers win games.
Number 3, we know them as a tough team that always competes, and there never seems to be issues in Tassie. But there are some issues after back-to-back losses in the previous round. Now, we can sort of put the Perth Wildcats one to the side, despite their inconsistency throughout the year. They've got a lot of firepower. The loss to Cairns at home, when Cairns have so many people out and have really struggled, that's been a big one. What is going on in Tassie, Jase?
Well, they had that massive weekend. They beat the Kings on the road. They come from behind, and then they roll out. And I know, but even Perth have been a bit here, there, and everywhere as well at times. Just the fact that they lost that game and they go down and lose to Cairns as well. I just think that's a rough weekend for them. Being at home, especially, like losing home games, they're going to chase them on the road. And I just think for Tassie and how consistent they normally are, that was just a very below Tassie week.
Absolutely. And I think one thing you can always count on is Scott Ross going to get him back on track. But I think getting David Johnson back, I think it's going to happen in the next few weeks, is going to be huge for them, because him and Bryce Hamilton early looked like a great combination.
And that's probably one thing that's messed with them a little bit Stark coming in, it's like they want to use him, but they don't want to use him. And so it's that kind of, I think he's a piece, like if you moved him to another club right now, I think he would be elite because he looks like he can go. But that little bit of, we need help, but we don't like his position kind of, yeah, I just think it hasn't mixed with their group and how they want to use him. So getting back to their full roster will help.
Now, number 4, we're going to go to a return for the Illawarra Hawks. Dave O'Hickey didn't have a great, no one from the Illawarra Hawks had a great opening game of last round, but bounced back in a huge way on Sunday against the 36ers. Looks like a bit of a tennis player with those sunnies on Jase, but great to see Dave O'Hickey back.
Yeah, scrap game 1. I don't want to talk about that. I think he came back and tried to do too much.
I think you and the rest of the Illawarra fans, mate, don't want to talk about that game.
Yeah, but I thought Davo tried to come back and be like this savior, and I don't know he is that, but how he played on Sunday, that's that version of him will play and start and be a big part on teams for a long, long time. I thought he played with great poise. I thought it was the most in control I've seen him play. There was situations where you see Davo gets the ball in the break and he just wants to push, where I almost felt like he really controlled the game and was a big reason why they had a chance to win that game. He filled the stat sheet across the board. But I just thought the way he played, he showed some maturation in his game. And if he can keep that level, Illawarra will win games very quickly off the back of that.
Again, I'm going to put you on the spot with Illawarra and how they've started the season. Yes, had some injury struggles, some roster struggles, and some roster changes. Can they make, not the play-in, can they make the Final Four in a playoff series where they're playing in a semi-final series, Jase?
If you say right now, no. And once again, they've got a long way to make up now, and they've got to make it up fast. So it doesn't get any easier for them this week. And they're starting to get to that position where you go, oh, geez, they played well against Adelaide on Sunday, but they lost. Those moments start to disappear pretty quickly. So I think they're going to need to start to piece together some wins pretty soon.
Last point, you're going to go to another Sydney King and another guy who had a really impressive round, and that's Xavier Cooks. He was really good for the Kings in their 2-0 weekend.
Yeah, I love Xav. He's a great guy. He's a great player. In my experience of training alongside him, playing alongside him, I've always enjoyed it. One of those few guys that just naturally makes people around him better because of the way he plays basketball. And I thought Sydney in Brisbane, the first quarter showed you why they played well because they played through Xav. Xav controlled a lot of the way they played, and that set up their weekend. And then even he fouls out on Monday night, but his input during those he only played 22 minutes. But his input in that period that he did play was immense. And I think for Sydney, they've got a lot of pieces, but they got to find ways where they play around and through Xav because good things will happen for everyone else. And he's copped a bit of flack, but I think a lot of it hasn't been. Some of it is definitely on him, and he would acknowledge that himself. The individual always takes the most of the brunt. They're almost their harshest critic / are their harshest critic, but they haven't helped Xav either with the way their makeup and the way they've played at times. And so just to see Xav look like he was enjoying himself and having a bit of that swag that he does, I thought it was great for him. And I'm just super happy he was able to piece together a weekend like that.
Yeah, I think that's a massive season thing with the Kings. We've spoken about it, getting Xav being able to push and almost lead the offense. I think that's when he was at his best, when he won the MVP. And I think for people like Kendrick Davis and Delhi and Jalen Galloway, it makes the game easier, right? Not less impactful because they don't have the ball in their hands as much. So I think he was huge. And the other thing, probably the main person I've seen give Jesse Edwards problems when Sydney went to that small ball lineup, if you can call it a small ball lineup with Xav at the 5. Jesse Edwards was just giving him space. And yes, that's okay because he's a non-shooter, but it just gave him a runway to go head down and just provided some issues with, Jesse Edwards having to guard Xavier with a head full of steam going downhill at him, Jase.
And this is the part that I think, like, they've got their kind of 7 or 8 guys that are their guys, but I just want to see the lineup more often of Cadee, Jalen Galloway, Bull, Quatnoy, and Xav at the 5, because I think around Xav now you have shooting everywhere. And like you said, when people give Xav space, he can get downhill and play, and he's really good in that space, but he's also great at getting to a point where he goes, I don't really have an advantage here, and now I'm going to flick and play out of a handoff situation. And I think that kind of lineup can unlock Zave, but it can also give those other guys what they quat naturally catch and shoot, Bull naturally catch and shoot. Jalen's turned into that, but Jalen's still best. He's best when he's downhill first. So with that lineup, I just think they can do things, and I think he can give Zave a good look. But that for me is where Sydney can thrive in terms of they can give you different looks at different times, and that's just one I'd love to see more of.
Yeah, massive weekend for Xavier Cooks and the Sydney Kings. And as we move on to our tips, now we both tipped the same teams this previous round, and we both got 5. So it's 34-27 so far. So I'm still around the mark. I'm coming back. And as we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, we are recording this on Wednesday. This will come out on Thursday. The Ignite game will already be played, and it's a good one with Illawarra and Melbourne United. I feel a little bit sorry for Illawarra because Melbourne United will be eager for that one after their loss. But Jase, looking across the games on the weekend, and we'll get our tips up on the screen at this point of the podcast, but the game I'm really looking forward to, Saturday night at John Cain Arena, Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, who are going under the radar, but are probably the hottest team in the league at the moment, taking on Melbourne United. In my opinion, the biggest throwdown so far.
Yeah, I think just given where both teams are, like Melbourne United are easily been the benchmark of the league this year, and Southeast have maybe surprised a few people with where they sit in second spot or equal second, if you want to call it, with Adelaide. So I just think there's a massive build-up. I think you get Southeast get United off the back of a Monday-Wednesday game too. So I think it's there for Southeast to kind of take the bull by the horns, but United have been so impressive this year, it's hard to also go past them. So I think that's the biggest game of the round. There is a few big ones. There's a lot of games this round, but I think that one right there is something that everyone should be looking forward to because it's going to be, and they always are. They got some fire to them. So I think that one's going to have a bit more than normal because of where they both sit on the ladder.
Another big one, just quickly before we sign off for the day, Adelaide taking on the Perth Wildcats at the Adelaide Entertainment Centre. Bryce Cotton taking on his former team. Now, we're still awaiting the first game back at RAC Arena, which I think is going to be the biggest one. But I'm tipping a 50-piece in this one, Jake. So I think Bryce is going off in this one.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all, too. I just, you know what Bryce is like. And I just think he knows sometimes when you know the guys you're playing against in and out like he does, it's a different feel. You don't feel like they might be guarding you, but you don't feel like it because you're so used to seeing them every day. Bryce at home in Adelaide, he's going to be fired up and it could be a 50-piece. You might be right.
Yeah, and I think if you think Delhi was looking back at Dean Vickerman a little bit on the this previous round, I think you might see that a little bit from Bryce across this game. I personally love Petty Bryce this year as well. He's had some shots at the Perth Wildcats, taking a shot back at Damien Lowry. I think we've seen a little bit of a different Bryce in Adelaide, Jase.
Yeah, I like it. I almost think like Bryce is almost just got comfortable. I've said it a lot tonight, but I think he's just comfortable with who he is. And I think he's just also comfortable that he is probably sits right side along Drewy as the best ever NBL player we've had in this league. So I think, I just think it's cool. I think we're getting a bit of Bryce saying what he wants to say. And I think he's sick of the way some people talk about certain things. And so he says, I'm going to say what I think. I would hope that the Perth Wildcats staff and front office aren't traveling to this game because if they are in the building, that'll increase his want to score even more. But no, it's gonna be pretty cool.
Yeah, going to be a really exciting game. That and of course the throwdown of the two matchouts that stand out for me. But that's it on another edition of Cut to the Jase. It's been a good one. Like I said, we brought it back to us and covered several things around the world in Aussie basketball. But some standout and really special guests coming up on Cut to the Jase. And until then, we'll see you next week.